Hello everyone. Today we are very glad to share our presentation with you. My name is Evie and my group members are Stacy and Yolanda. The topic of our presentation is speaking self-assessment, mismatches between learners and the teacher's criteria. Okay, let's get started. Here is the outline of our presentation. The presentation is comprised of 4 parts. I will take charge of the first one, introduction. It includes background, the aim of the study, the significance, and research questions. Stacy is going to be responsible for the second part, involving methodology, result of analysis, interpretation of results. Then Yolanda will give a conclusion. The third part consists imitation, suggestion for further research, and critique. Finally, a discussion question will be provided. Alright, let's move on to the first section, introduction. As for the background, there are two important terms that we should know at first. Let's look at the first one, perspectual mismatch. Human interaction has the potential to contain ambiguities and mismatches. Misinterpretations and mismatches are part of everyday teaching and learning. According to the scholar, the concept of learner perception enables learners to participate in the decision-making process. Oral assessment is not only aimed to learners but also to teachers teaching and learning in language classrooms. Therefore, the success of any assessment process also depends on the decisions that teachers need to make about learner performance and the scoring criteria. In addition, studies of learner-to-learner interaction in real classroom environments have shown that learners have different understandings of factors that contribute to classroom interaction, including communication, clarity, grammatical accuracy, and corrective feedback. The scholar pointed out that there are at least 10 potential sources of mismatch between teacher intention and learner interpretation, so there is a perception gap, such as cognitive, communicative, linguistic, strategic, cultural, and so on. Therefore, in assessing oral ability, there are differences in how learners view oral structure and what teachers actually do in oral assessment. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. The second term, speaking assessment. Speaking is seen by language testers as the most difficult of the 4 language skills to assess. Assessing speaking requires that we either observe a live oral performance or that we capture the performance by some means for evaluation at a later time. As a formative assessment tool, oral self-assessment can promote learning and establish goal-oriented activities, and it can also reduce the teacher's evaluation burden and eventually be extended as a long-term experience. In addition, in the goal process, learners' focus is to master learning goals, self-regulate, take action to achieve the desired goals, evaluate their learning, and formulate the necessary strategies to achieve satisfactory progress. The defining characteristic of effective self-assessment is that learners participate in the understanding of spoken language grading standards and enable them to bridge their performance gaps. Further discussion of assessment criteria can help avoid any possible mismatch between teachers and learners' understanding of the criteria. Through the previous research, it can be seen that the standard adopted by the learner in assessing a learner's goal ability is tested according to the teacher's evaluation standard for the second language oral, not fully adapted yet. In fact, to better understand oral self-assessment, The research is needed to find the impact of oral scoring standards and follow-up exercises on the accuracy of learner self-assessment compared with teacher assessment. Okay, let's continue. Let's have a look at the purpose of the study. There are two main purposes. The first one is to investigate the mismatches between learners' assessment of their own speaking ability and the teacher's assessment, and to examine the effectiveness of speaking self-assessment before and after the learners being provided with speaking score criteria and the following up practice section. Since oral self-assessment requires learners to assess their abilities, but oral English has received little attention, so the main focus of this study is whether there are significant differences among learners. In addition, this study aims to investigate the extent to which the management of scoring standards affects the consistency between learners and teacher assessments. Alright, let's move on to the next slide. The significance of the study. First of all, the mismatch between levels, self-assessment, and teacher assessment can be better understood. An empirical study is needed to examine the perceived differences between learners and the teachers, as well as the use of spoken language scoring criteria, and to find that the adoption of assessment criteria affects the accuracy of learners' scoring. In addition, to clarify the possible evaluation gap between learners and the teachers' perceptions of oral competence, and it will also help teachers more effectively identify and correctly address perceived gaps in order to promote successful learning outcomes in the classroom. Okay, let's continue. The last one is research question. According to the purpose and the significance of the study, the following four questions have become the research focus. The first question is, what criteria do learners use to rate their own speaking performance before they're being provided with the speaking scoring criteria and the following up practice sessions? The second one, is there any significant difference between the learner's assessment of their own speaking ability before and after being provided with the speaking scoring criteria and the following up practice session? The third one, to what extent are learners' assessment in agreement with teachers' assessments prior to and following the learners being provided with the speaking scoring criteria and the follow-up practice session? And the last question, how do the learners evaluate the effectiveness of their speaking self-assessment? Alright, this is what I had for my presentation. Next, the second part will be introduced by my group member Stacy.
Hello everyone, I'm Stacy. I will introduce the second part, including methodology, result of analysis, and interpretation of results. There are 35 participants in this research, including 29 English as foreign language learners and 6 English as foreign language teachers. Here are the instruments and data collection procedures. First, teacher group decide 3 topics together, and then learners talk about all 3 topics within 9 minutes, and the process is recorded by computerized recording system in a language laboratory. And then learners listen to audio recorded copy of their own performance and write down their own criteria for rating speaking ability on a speaking assessment sheet with a score of 50 for each topic. After that, teachers develop and agree upon a list of 10 criteria, against which performance of the learners could be evaluated before accessing the rating of student group. And then the learners were invited to use criteria provided by teacher group to rate their performance and give themselves a score of 50 after 40 days rest. And then teacher group use the same checklist to rate students groups performance before accessing learner score. And then the last one, learner group 1 month later wrote reflection papers in English and elaborate on their attitude towards speaking assessment. This is the criteria list, including fluency, grammar, vocabulary, and so on. This is the test topic. I only provide topic 1 as an example. This is self-assessment sheet before the students are provided criteria. This is the sheet for after context. Let's move to the second part, data analysis and results. For the first question, the criteria are the learners mentioned in their comments for rating speaking on the first occasion were analyzed inductively and grouped into categories. There are 7 aspects, including topic management, competence, fluency, vocabulary, pronunciation, time management, and grammar. For the second question, quantitative data was collected and entered into the SPSS program, and then they were analyzed by the paired sample t-test to discover whether or not significant changes occurred as to the learner's assessment of their own speaking performance according to the provision of the speaking score checklist. The results showed that according to Table 2, the learner's mean score before and after their being provided with the criteria are 36.08 and 33.82 respectively. A comparison across the two ranges of mean scores reveal that the learners give themselves higher scores on the first occasion than the second. Table 3 presents that the result of the paired sample t-test applied to the mean score of the learners and the two rating occasions, and it is obvious that there was a large effect size with a substantial differences in the learners' rating when they were given the criteria. To the third question, the peer product movement correlation and facial z-score are used for analysis. As shown in Table 4, to analyze differences of rating between the teachers and learners, the mean scores, maximum and minimum scores, and standard deviations were calculated between the two groups. The mean scores for the teachers and learners do not show a large difference following the scoring criteria. The differences between the two mean scores in the second phase is just 0.55, indicating an increasing in agreement between the learners and teachers' rating. Furthermore, as displayed in Table 5, the correlation coefficient between teachers' rating and learners' self-awarded scores following the scoring criteria points to strong positive correlation. For the last question, the researchers adopted the constant competitive method, an inductive and data-driven method used in grounded theory. The major themes stemming from the data include 7 aspects. First, increased self-awareness and detection of weak points followed by improved learning. Second, the positive influence of the use of speaking scores criteria on the accuracy of self-assessment. Third, the long-lasting effect of self-assessment in comparison to teacher assessment on learning. 4. The unreliable nature of self-assessment. 5. The time-consuming nature of self-assessment. 6. Encouraging ongoing conduction of self-assessment. And the last one, it providing perfect models. Let's move to the discussion part. I will introduce the interpretation of result here. Based on the result of data analysis, the author provided some connection and innovation related to the current research. First, the learners were not able to make sound judgments about their own ability prior to the application of the size criterion. 2. The application of different rating criteria may lead to lack of precision on speaking assessment. 3. The correlation of learners and teacher rating in speaking assessment are relatively low when learners apply their own personal criteria for self-rating. 4. The learners' enhanced understanding of speaking scoring criteria may bring about improved learning and higher self-assessment accuracy. The last one, learners' self-assessment as a social practice lead to the betterment of the learning experience. That's all for my part. My group member, Yolanda, will introduce the next part.
Hello, I'm Yolanda, and I'm going to introduce the Part 3, Conclusion. In conclusion, the researchers stated that if learners are provided with the teacher's agreed upon criteria and then practice to do the self-ratings according to this criteria, this could be an effective way to improve the accordance of speaking assessment ratings between teachers and students. Moreover, the potential evaluative mismatch could be minimized due to the employment of the given assessment criteria, and the speaking rating is possible to achieve the accuracy. Besides, the self-assessment promotes learners enhance their consciousness and facilitate their learning. Now, as for the implication part, both theoretical and practical implications are shown in this study. For the theoretical implication, the research focuses on filling the gaps and make up for the deficiency, and prove the significance and effectiveness of self-assessment on minimizing the evaluative mismatches. For the practical implication, from the teacher's perspective, they provide opportunities for students to frequently assess themselves in order to improve their learning. Well, from the major English language teaching stakeholders, this could be regarded as a contribution to the success of teaching and learning process through making the comprehensible scoring criteria. Now, there are also some limitations and suggestions for further research. As for the limitations, firstly, the data of the participants are gathered from the convenient sample without diversity. Therefore, in the further study, the research could conduct under larger and more representative groups of participants in different contexts. Moreover, another problem is that the language proficiency level was not considered as a variable, and it may affect the accuracy of self-assessment, so it needs a further research in the future. Additionally, the task type was limited to one type in this study. Therefore, varied speaking task types should be offered in order to support the view according to the same research question. Now let's move on to the critic part. As for the strength part, in this study, the interval between two reading occasions is long enough to avoid the impact on participants' judgments, which show the validity and the reliability of the study. Moreover, the design of the study considers various aspects for learners, such as provide appropriate model, ensure learners have no pressure. Lastly, the research is supported by various proper literatures to show the reasonable outcome. As for the weaknesses, it can be seen that the distribution of gender is not balanced, with 22 female students and 7 male students, 5 female teachers and 1 male teacher, which may cause the data partial to female responses. Moreover, the quantity of participants and teachers may be limited to provide enough data. Finally, we would like to let you think about these questions based on self-assessment. The first question is, have you ever experienced the mismatches between your and teacher's criteria, especially on the context of speaking self-assessments? The second question is, do you have some other techniques to avoid mismatches effectively? That's all. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy our presentation.